So, um, hello. Can you hear me? Great. I'm back in New York, which is great. And it's good to see you all today. I wanted to just first acknowledge that this weekend is Mother's Day in the US. And I know for a lot of us, a lot of people, that can be a very charged time. For myself in particular, my mother died 7 years ago, so I actually ordered some flowers in her honor. And so I thought, this is a great opportunity to practice, another reason to practice compassion for ourselves and others. So I thought tonight we'd actually do some guided Tonglen, or sending and taking. I first just want to acknowledge the land that I'm on, the traditional land of the Lenape and Canarsie nations. And also this land is deeply indebted to the labor and lives indentured and free of African and African descended people. And I live in a state, in a city that is also heavily immigrant, people who were not born in the US. So I think New York City has something like, is like 65% or something immigrant, non-native born, and the state is maybe 35%. So I want to acknowledge all of those levels of freedom struggles and wisdom, and how today we still continue to feel the effects and be harmed and killed by white supremacy, thinking particularly of Maud, who was would have been his 26th birthday today. He was murdered in Brunswick, Georgia, by two white men while running. Young Black man. So I'm just thinking about his family and all of our families, Tatiana Jefferson and Sandra Bland and Mike Brown and Philando Castile, and it goes on and on. The many Amadou Diallo, going back to many people who have been murdered by the state or by agents of the state or by white people who thought, who were carrying out the white supremacy. So just in the midst of this pandemic of coronavirus, I feel that it compounds all the other ills and all the other pandemics and all the other, structural and global issues that we face, climate change. I was like, oh yeah, right. Snowing and so in May, okay, right. And so that our compassion practices are for us and also for others and for the world. There's no like difference. It's for all of us. It's to heal us all and to give us the ability to cultivate strength and clarity and stability to go out in the world and do the things that we do, which are often, I think, very difficult for many of us. So I just want to do a very short reading, and then we can do a little peaceful abiding, and then go into our Tonglen practice. So this is from a book called Tonglen, The Path of Transformation by Ani Pema Chodron, who's a Buddhist nun from the US, but who lives in Canada at she's a Tibetan Buddhist nun who lives at Gamble Abbey in Nova Scotia. So this part is called Sharing. It's a short little book, it's 100 and something pages, but it's, half pages. So this is called Sharing Your Heart. The practice of sharing your heart is twofold: sharing happiness and accepting pain. For the first, when anything is delightful in your life, you wish that other people could share it. For the second, when you feel any sense of suffering, you think that many other people are also suffering, and you wish that they could be free from it. This is the very essence of the Tonglen outlook. When things are pleasant, think of others. When things are painful, think of others. If this practice is the only thing you remember after reading this book, it will benefit you and everyone you come in contact with. So I first invite you to settle into your space, whatever that may be. If you feel you want to lay down, if you feel you want to sit up, if you feel you want to stand, just whatever is most relaxing for you or feels most as comfortable as possible. And I invite you to feel into your body, letting yourself feel your body's weight and width and height and density. Feeling where your body is soft and relaxed, feeling where it may be tight. Feeling a sense of appreciation about your body. And that it's perfect just how it is. Maybe some of you are transitioning from work Zooms to this Zoom. And so letting yourself just kind of sink into the feeling of your body, feeling yourself root into the earth, our mother and our support and our home and our witness. At the same time, feeling ourselves rise to the stars, which is also part of our makeup. So feeling that relationship between rooting down and rising up. And feeling then your emotional state, just knowing and noting how you're feeling in your emotional field, whether it's up or down or in the middle or sideways, good, bad, indifferent. And that we're really not trying to change it, but we're trying to notice and become familiar with our emotions, our feeling state. Appreciating that. And then letting ourselves feel our mind its speed or its if it's crowded or if it's spacious. Again, whatever the quality of your mind is at this moment, that's okay. We just want to greet it so that feeling into our body, our emotions, and our mind. And then coming to paying attention to the feeling of our body breathing, relaxing the front of our body and softening the front of our body, and letting the back of our body be our support, being upright without being uptight, relaxing the eyes and the jaw, relaxing the face, full stop, softening the front, rooting down. Just your regular breath, feeling that. Where it moves in and out of your body. What parts of your body do you become aware of? What parts remain silent? Letting your experience rest on this feeling of the body breathing. If thoughts and memories arise, it's okay. Let them arise, abide, and fall on their own. Inviting in your whole experience. And then I invite you to just breathe in the feeling of heavy and dark and smoky, thick. And breathe out the sense of light and spacious and airy. Breathing in into your heart center, that feeling of thick, heavy, smoky, letting your heart transform it and breathing out light, airy, spacious. We'll just do that for a few minutes. Breathing in that heavy, smoky feeling into your heart and breathing out from your heart clean, fresh, spacious air. It's heavy, hot, claustrophobic, and then light, cool, spacious. Imagine that your heart center is a beautiful, glowing purifier, a sun that purifies all illness, disease, impurities, difficulty. So that's where we breathe into the heart and breathe out from the heart. And now turning your attention towards yourself and breathing, bringing to mind first a difficult situation you're facing right now, a challenging situation or an annoying situation, or just could be physical, it could be mental, emotional, it could be historical, it could be familial. Emotional. Could be an irritation. So bringing to mind that whatever that difficulty is, breathing that in and breathing out its solution or its antidote. Letting your heart transform it. Breathing in your difficulty and breathing out its solution. And relaxing that, taking a few grounding breaths, letting your self go. Bringing to mind a loved one They can be alive or no longer on this plane. See their face or hear their voice or smell their smell. And bring to mind a difficulty you think that they are facing or have faced. Even if they're no longer on this plane, we can, with our intention and with our heart, can help to release difficulties. So bringing to mind that loved one and just breathing in a difficulty they're facing or have faced, and breathing out antidote to that. Feeling your heart break open and release its love, power, strength, wisdom, and healing. At any time, if you feel overwhelmed, feel free to relax out of the practice. Give yourself permission to be gentle with yourself. You can always go back to just feeling the body breathing if you are, losing the connection to yourself. And you can just relax that loved one. Taking 3 grounding breaths. Bringing to mind someone who's fairly neutral. This could be a coworker or a neighbor or someone you see frequently at the store. Fairly neutral. You said hi, bringing that person to mind and imagining a difficulty they might be experiencing. Breathing in that difficulty, using your radiant heart to transform and offer a solution or the antidote. Feeling the potency of your mind, body, heart, and breath to transform suffering into wisdom. for this neutral person. And you can just let that relax and dissolve. Taking 3 grounding breaths. Bringing to mind an enemy or someone who's very difficult for you. You may know them or not know them. Breathing in their imagined difficulty, challenge, and through the power of your uh, awakened heart, you send out the antidote. So imagining the difficult person's difficulties, breathing those into your heart and breathing out the antidote to their difficulties. And you can let that difficult person, you can relax that, grounding yourself again in your body. Again, please take care of yourself. If you feel any overwhelm, you can just go to feeling the body breathing. That's healing as well and compassionate. And now I invite you to think of a larger issue that's impacting the world or a specific population or a country or a group of people. And you can breathe that in, that difficulty in, and breathe out its antidote. letting that relax and grounding yourself again in the body and the breath. And I want to invite us again to just return to ourselves, calling any difficulty that's come up to mind for ourselves and sending out an antidote. And from here, letting our heart break wide open. And as it breaks wide open, it releases all of our wisdom and kindness, strength, delight, power in the form of a healing light that covers the earth and all of the galaxies. We're generous and unselfish in our ability to share that because it's a jewel that never runs out of light. So in that heartbreak, it cracks open the jewel and shares its healing light. Going out as far as you can imagine, healing the earth and all its inhabitants, and air on the earth and the water, and beyond the earth, beyond our solar system and galaxy. And we can just come back to a feeling of the body breathing, grounding ourselves in our body, sitting on the earth. Feeling our body breathing. Letting ourselves relax any tension. Melting into our seat. And just dedicating the merit of our practice, whatever wisdom or uh, relief or anything we experience, is sending that out to everyone and anyone who needs it. I just want to say a few words about Tonglen. One of the things that, and I think I've said this before, but one of the things that's it's been clear, I mean, and from a Buddhist perspective, of course, there is an emphasis on non-duality of experience, and that from duality, from separation, comes all suffering. And that, in fact, this idea of self and other creates incredible confusion and hellish experience. And as with other times of plague, famine, and war, one of the things that becomes apparent in times of great uncertainty, so more than the regular uncertainty, is how interdependent we are, how connected we all are, and the idea that we're somehow completely autonomous units is really a fabrication of ego. And it's a way to not actually feel the pain and tenderness and poignancy that arises from being connected to other beings. So hyper individualism is a way to kind of cut off, almost like a limb, cut off our heart muscle. And I've been very encouraged by so many beautiful acts of love and kindness, simple kindnesses as well as more grand kindnesses. A friend posted something on social media, which was a performance of Swan Lake done by a number of Misty Copeland put it together with a number of ballerinas from 14 different countries, and they did a portion of Swan Lake to raise money for ballet people who are live performers in the ballet industry. And it was, and then I forgot the cellist's name. He was an American gentleman, and it was just beautiful and haunting and heartbreaking to see all of these ballet dancers in their individual homes or somewhere outside dancing alone, many in their homes environments, together on the Zoom screen, stitched together. And it reminded me of the longing to be together and how much we actually need each other. And compassion practices, Tonglen in particular, is very powerful because you can also do it at any time. Sometimes if I'm just walking down the street and I notice like irritation or anxiety or fear arising, I can just turn my thoughts to others, and I can just send out breathe it in first, feel it, not repress it, and then breathe out the kind of antidote to that, because other people I'm not alone in whatever I'm feeling, as I read in the beginning, whether it's joy or pain. And there's something about sharing both. Sharing joy multiplies joy, sharing pain reduces pain. It's a very interesting paradoxical experience. And so these practices are very simple. It's the heart, it's the breath, it's the mind's eye, it's the body, and it's really turning our mind towards first just the feeling, then ourselves, and then others. And then I like to come back to the self, because sometimes things come up in the practice, and just reminder that we can also self-soothe and offer ourselves compassion. And we always start and end with stabilizing and strengthening and clarifying the mind with, shamatha practice, with peaceful abiding, so that it bookends that tremendous offering we're giving. And sometimes people ask, well, what can I do? I want to do something. And this is doing something. Because in fact, if I'm actually not working with my own experience, whatever it may be, whether I like it or don't like it, or I'm indifferent to it, if I'm not working with that, then whatever I do in the world is actually sending out confusion, you know? And I don't want to pass on my confusion to others. I want to pass on my, wisdom and clarity and strength and helpfulness. And so sometimes the impetus to just do skips a step. I think many of us are actually really good at doing, but it's harder to first contemplate. And so that we place the doing in a context of care and compassion rather than habit. And it's really an act of generosity, and it's actually, I don't want to imagine the percentage of the time that I think about myself in a day. So it's actually an incredible act of generosity to turn my mind toward others. And it's a real training that's actually beneficial. When I'm just thinking about, not when it's like, okay, but when it's just like the chatter. So being generous in my thoughts, being generous in my speech, those things are actually sometimes more difficult than being generous with my actions. Because they're internal and I feel like they're mine, So sometimes bringing to mind someone who I don't like, being like, okay, how can I be actually generous? That actually helps me. It's very interesting to be generous in my thoughts towards someone who's challenging for me. So I just wanted to offer that, and then, see if any of you had any questions or thoughts. Yeah, Nada, here, I can unmute you. Go ahead.
First of all, thank you. This is wonderful. When we were breathing in something heavy and thick and smoky and breathing out lightness, like I was really just feeling like that's what we're breathing in constantly with this white supremacy. And I had a really hard time today with the Arbery murder, and just I'm trying to think about how to breathe out. Particularly, I'm thinking about my sons, one who has autism and may not respond appropriate in a way that, it may be more dangerous for him, I'm thinking. And what am I breathing out? And I'm breathing out love, and I'm trying to breathe out protection and freedom, I guess. So that was helpful to just be thoughtful about what I'm breathing in constantly, I guess.
Yeah. I think similar to COVID, whenever, when I was like sort of saying the litany of names, whenever, the thing that's really, this young guy was murdered in February. And it's only now that, and I think that the poison of white supremacy is everywhere. And I think for some people, it's an event that has to be dealt with, or it's because of the current presidency, or it's somehow contingent, or
Yeah.
And I think for me, I'll speak for myself, and for other Black folks in particular, but also other Black, Indigenous people of color I've spoken to, these are really painful reminders of the conditions under which we live. Many of us, including myself, have had very scary experiences with police other and white folks, where my life is, I've been cared for my life, and they knew that they were wielding a power that they were granted. And then sometimes it's smaller things, but the to react in a way that would be appropriate for the situation would put me in that same danger. So it, um, for me, this has really exhausted me because I'm like, I'm just thinking of someone had written this poem that I saw, and they were saying like, Black folks are tired. It was like name all the things we couldn't do and all the ways we were killed, and all the chatter and the work that needs to be done around this is very, very deep. It's in the bones of this country, right? It's when you found a place on genocide and dispossession and enslavement, that doesn't go away because you have a like Native American History Month, or you have a Black History Month, or you have laws that outlaw certain things. It shifts and changes, and we see that Native Americans or Indigenous and Black folks, the legacy of our relationship to this founding of this country continues in epidemiology and sociology and psychology and all kinds of ways. And these kinds of murders that are in any other context would be outrageous, are almost, it's become a trope, right? There's like it's trauma porn, and so sometimes I feel it's very important to acknowledge that I don't only do compassion practices in relationship to white supremacy, but I have to do compassion practices in order to do the other work. Otherwise, I will become twisted and bitter by the experiences I have on the, not so much now because I don't see people, as much, but but experiences that I have often, that are structural, and they're actually impersonal, and it's and they're structural, so they happen all the time to many of us. And I think even with coronavirus, even with COVID-19, seeing how it's playing out structurally with who is dying, who's getting treated, who's getting turned away for treatment, who's being told that they're faking, who's getting subpar treatment. It's a well-worn script, and so I feel that rather than that heartbreak making me bitter, I'm working with how to help it to empower me and to help others. There's only so much sharing on social media and outrage machining, right? That because it doesn't do anything. But I think about the compassion practices help ground me in real solutions and in real hard conversations I have to have with myself and others about divesting from the benefits of white supremacy that sometimes are given to Black people, other people of color. And finding strength to be able to calling on that strength to be able to fight and eradicate it. Like one of the things I was doing was breathing in anti-Black violence and breathing out the destruction and eradication of white supremacy. And so that's a tool in a toolbox, hopefully many, many tools, but every time I feel devastated. Like I know there's a documentary that I'm interested in, but I know I can't watch it. Just like I couldn't watch the Central Park, David, I was like, I can't do it. You know, there's a documentary about the Atlanta child murders that happened in the, and I'm like, I remember being a kid in the 80s and being terrified. I didn't know where Atlanta was in comparison to, but I being terrified because there were also a lot of kidnappings happening in the 80s. I don't know why, it's really scary. And I was like, yeah, that's something that really interests me, but I can't watch it, you know? And so I have to also know my limits in terms of what is too much at a certain time.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, Shanté.
Hi.
Hi, Boo. I so look forward to these every Friday. Hi to everyone. I'm so happy, Nada, that you brought that up. I'm wondering if a lot of us were thinking about that, doing the compassion practice. So I don't really, this is not so much a question. It is sort of a question. I'm articulating it as I speak, but I'm more in the bitterness stage that you mentioned earlier. So like when was thinking about this as I was doing the compassion practice, and I had the audacity to bring up the 2 white men that killed that man, to like, let me just, and I was like, whoa, that I took on too much.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I love that you are using that. What you're speaking to is kind of transmuting that and using it as a way to, what it sounds like gain wisdom. And I'm just curious to hear a little more about the practice or process of doing that. I know we're not in a race, but you have more practice doing this work. And so you're further along, if you will. And I'm just curious to hear about that process, because that just seems so out of the realm for me right now. And then I'm like, am I practicing Buddhist? You know what I mean? Like, it seems beyond for me right now.
I still have that experience sometimes where I think I'm like, I call something to mind and I'm like, no, you know? But I do think I think it's like do manageable, you know, like bite size, because well, you want to be genuine to your own experience and you want to respect your own boundaries. So you don't have to be like, oh, the Ku Klux Klan, I want, you know, you know, like that's not, it's like, let someone else do that. You know what I mean? You know, I don't know if I could ever, for instance, like I'm not, I hope there are other people who are doing Tonglen for George Zimmerman, because he's probably never going to be in my Tonglen practice. I don't know. So I think you start sort of small, and even with yourself, it's like, you know, not taking on the like your biggest issue, but just, you know, you can feel. Some days I feel like I have a much, you know, it changes every day. I have a larger capacity, and other days it's like, no, I have a smaller capacity, you know? And so you work with that. And I mean, there's a lot to say about this. I think sometimes with this practice, you know, when I first started doing it, the way I recall kind of receiving the instruction, it felt very decontextualized from any like history or any cultural specificity or any kind of like that Black people are in particular asked to always take on the burdens of others. And so this is not that kind of practice. This is a practice of, through our reminding ourselves of our inherent wisdom, of our wakeful nature, that we're already awake. We're just trying to remember that, right? We're just trying to like come home to that. And this is these practices that were, you know, cultivated, that were invented by, or rediscovered by people who really suffered, you know, Tibetan folks, you know, in the 18th century, 17th, 18th century, these bodhisattva or compassion practices are difficult. So they are traditionally, they come when one takes the bodhisattva vow, and you say, okay, I want to work for the wakefulness of all sentient beings, cockroaches, Donald Trump, Ku Klux Klan, as well as, my mama, whoever, and people I love. And it's really great. In The Way of the Bodhisattva, written by Shanté, he said, he has this part where he's like, what have I done? Why did I walk down this path? This is hell. This is torturous. Okay, well, I've committed to doing this. And so these practices are meant to be difficult because they actually tap into the fundamental truth of no separation, of non-duality. And the pain of actually what happens, so the murder of Maud Aubrey is from a Buddhist point of view, you could say that is an expression of a really warped perspective of duality, right? That's so deep that someone minding their business jogging is an enemy that you have to murder. So that's how deep duality can go, right? We murder people, you know what I mean? And we can become so separated from our true nature that we see danger everywhere. Or sometimes people see, danger everywhere there's a Black person, right? So this is not about faking it or la la land. It's like where you're at. So if it's like if you have a thimble full of compassion, that's enough. That could heal the whole universe, actually. And it's about being true to where you want to send that energy, And I think in particular for me, I feel like, because of how Buddhism came to the West, it has really been filtered through this very white middle class liberal perspective, which I think has a lot of times tended toward fantasy. And so this is really grounded in our very authentic experience, the funk and the grime and the muck and the bitterness and the hatred. Those are real feelings, and the all-encompassing rage, the numbness that I, often feel. And to not stay in that place, I do these practices. I'm going to experience what I experience. I invite all of my experience in. I make friends with all of my experience because my wisdom is in all of that. It's in the neuroses. So I don't want to get rid of it. So your wisdom was telling you, no, I'm not, Bubba and Bubba Jr. aren't getting that's not, they got 38,000 people in a Facebook group talking about freedom. So, they got plenty of people thinking about them. You know what I mean? And so just knowing our limits. And then sometimes, sometimes I can bring Donald Trump to mind. Why? Because he is leading this country. And if he could fucking wake up, it would make a difference, But more often than not, I think of the people affected by his decisions, impacted by his decisions, but sometimes, So I think it's important to keep it 100 for yourself, where you're at is where you're at. And being a Buddhist doesn't mean you're above humanity. It means you're human. And so feeling that humanity, that's the doorway to wakefulness. And to be fully awake is to be fully human. And so my experience is that it's gradual. I've moved a few centimeters over the years, and gone from a very anxious, neurotic, controlling person to a less anxious, neurotic, controlling person, to someone who experiences a lot more joy, and and experiences deep pain at the state of humanity. That people would rather make conspiracy theories rather than heal and help other people heal and look at the brokenness of systems. So part of the double-edged sword of being a Buddhist practitioner is constantly feeling that dagger in my heart. Feeling annoyed and stuff, but really it's deep, deep heartbrokenness at how much we've cultivated ignorance and attachment and aggression. And that just leads to a lot of stupidity, just a lot of, people drinking bleach. Just desperation, just incredible desperation and incredible wanting safety. So it's difficult. It should be difficult because these practices assume that most people are not able to cultivate wakefulness for themselves. So some of us have to take on more. But that's a commitment one makes, informally or formally. So I took my Bodhisattva vow in 2009. I had no idea what I was signing up for. And what's happened gradually is that I have less and less privacy. That's basically what's I'm more available to more people. That's what's happened in my life. So it was a choice, and that feels like that's my calling. So I'm called to do is I'm called to be available, with the proper boundaries, and I have a therapist, all that stuff. But I'm called to do this work in my life, and it's heartbreaking, and it's also rewarding. So yeah, piecemeal, little tiny bites. Thanks, Jahan, for being here. Well, I want to be respectful of time because it's after the hour. You can always feel free to email me if you have any questions. Let's put my email in the chat. You don't want to ask them on the recorded Zoom. And this recording should be up. Did I spell it right? Okay. Yes. It should be up in, Alex should put it up in the next 48 hours or so if you want to rewatch it. And again, the book that I read from is a really great contemporary book on Tonglen. So it's Tonglen, The Path of Transformation by Pema Chodron. So please stay safe and sane and healthy. Night.